Captain Lyra Jensen was no stranger to danger. As one of humanity's most elite soldiers, she had faced down enemies of all kinds, from alien invaders to hostile warlords. But today, as she stood aboard the sleek command ship Vigilant, gazing at the distant planet of Zixer, she felt something different stir inside her. Something more than the usual anticipation of a battle. The mission was clear. Eliminate the Zixer warlord, Kale. He was said to be a monster, brutal, cunning, and nearly unbeatable. Rumors about his strength, his intelligence, and his cruelty had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Lyra had heard it all, but none of it mattered. She had a job to do. Nothing was going to stop her from completing it. Her Team 5 highly trained soldiers was ready for the mission. They were the best of the best, selected for their skill, discipline, and unwavering loyalty to humanity. Lyra's squad had faced countless threats before, but nothing like this. The Zixer were known for their fierce warriors and their savage way of conquering planets. And now, they had an alpha leader so feared that even the most battle-hardened soldiers trembled at his name. "We'll take him down," Lyra muttered to herself, her voice cold and unwavering. "We have to." Her team stood ready behind her, all dressed in the same black tactical suits that covered their bodies like a second skin. They were silent, but their eyes were sharp, focused. Lyra didn't need to give them any more instructions. They knew what to do. They had trained for moments like this. As the Vigilant neared the Zixer homeworld, Lyra's mind raced. She reviewed the mission plan against sneak into the heart of the Zixer capital. Locate Alpha Kale and eliminate him before he could rally his forces. A quick, clean strike. No room for error. The captain took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself. She had led her team through countless battles, but this felt different. Something about Alpha Kale felt ... off. It wasn't just the rumors or the stories. There was something almost mythical about him. Could they really kill him? Captain, one of her team members, Private Ethan, spoke up, breaking her thoughts. "We're entering the atmosphere. We're almost there." Lyra nodded, taking her seat at the command console. "Prepare for landing. We move out as soon as we touch down." The ship descended, and the landscape of the Zixer world unfolded below. The surface was barren, marked by jagged cliffs, deep craters, and an eerie reddish hue. It was a world of desolation, a perfect home for a warrior race like the Zixer. The Vigilant landed softly on a rocky plateau, the ship's engines hissing as they powered down. Lyra and her team quickly filed out of the ship, their boots crunching against the rough ground. They were deep within enemy territory now, and the air felt thick with danger. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice low, but filled with determination. "Stay sharp." They moved forward, staying in tight formation, using the natural cover of the landscape to hide their approach. Lyra had no intention of being caught off guard. Every step was calculated. Every movement was precise. It didn't take long for them to spot the first signs of enemy-presence Zixer patrols. Heavily armed and watching the horizon with suspicion, Lyra's squad moved silently, using advanced stealth technology to stay hidden in the shadows. They avoided the patrols, silently picking them off one by one. It was a tactic they had perfected over years of combat. It worked flawlessly. As they drew closer to the heart of the Zixer capital, Lyra's heart rate picked up. They were getting near the lair of the warlord himself. They would have to be even more careful now. Then suddenly, a voice crackled in her earpiece. "Captain, we've got a problem." It was Sergeant Ramirez, one of her most trusted soldiers. His voice was tense, a rare break in his normally steady demeanor. "What's the situation?" Lyra responded, her voice calm but alert. "We've got incoming," Ramirez said. "Big incoming. We've been detected." Lyra's mind raced as she turned to her team. They couldn't afford to be found. Not now, not when they were so close. "Move out." "We'll take them head on," Lyra ordered. Her team broke formation, fanning out to take up positions around the group of Zixer soldiers that had appeared in their path. The Zixer were massively twice the size of a human, with thick scaled skin and glowing eyes that radiated menace. They carried weapons designed for sheer destruction. Lyra's squad, though smaller and less physically imposing, was faster, more agile, and better trained. A firefight broke out. The sound of blaster fire echoed across the barren landscape as both sides exchanged shots. Lyra's squad moved with deadly precision, taking down Zixer soldiers one by one. But there were too many of them, and they were coming in waves. Lyra ducked behind a rock formation, firing her blaster at the advancing aliens. She could feel the heat of the shots as they narrowly missed her. She wasn't going to let them stop her. Not now. Fall back. She shouted to her team, "We need to regroup." The soldiers didn't hesitate. They covered each other as they retreated to higher ground. Lyra's mind raced what was going on. The Zixer had been expecting them, but how had they been betrayed? As her team climbed to a safer position, Lyra took a moment to look around. Her squad was doing their best to hold the line, but she could see the strain in their eyes. They weren't going to be able to keep fighting like this forever. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Lyra saw him, Alpha Kale. He appeared like a shadow emerging from the chaos, a towering figure that seemed to dominate the battlefield. He was dressed in dark armor, his muscles rippling under the weight of his heavy gear. His eyes glowed with a fierce intensity that sent a chill down Lyra's spine. This was the monster she had been sent to destroy, but there was something about him that didn't match the stories. The tales of his savagery had painted him as a ruthless beast, a mindless killer. But Lyra didn't see that now. She saw a leader, calm and focused, as though he were watching everything unfold like it was part of a larger plan. Alpha Kale's voice boomed, deep and commanding. "Human," he called out, his words carrying across the battlefield. "You think you can kill me? You think your people are the answer to this war?" Lyra's hand tightened around her blaster. She had trained for this moment, but now that it was here, she felt the weight of the situation. This was no ordinary enemy. This was something else entirely. "Your fight is with me," Kale continued, his voice colder than the void of space. "But I'm not your true enemy. You cannot see it, but there are forces far beyond you, forces that will crush your kind without a second thought." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. What was he talking about? Was this some sort of trick? She couldn't let her guard down. Before she could react, Kale raised his hand, and the Zixer forces suddenly stopped. It was as if they were frozen in time. The fire ceased, and the battlefield fell silent. "Tell me," Kale said, his voice softer now, almost inviting. "Will you continue to fight for a war that is already lost? Or will you listen to me and join forces to save your species from what is coming?" Lyra hesitated. Her mission was clear: eliminate the monster. But now, standing in front of him, she realized that there was more at play here than she could ever have imagined. For the first time, she doubted herself. "Why should I trust you?" Lyra asked, her voice steady, though inside, she was filled with confusion. Kale's eyes softened, just for a moment. "Because, human, you are smarter than to let pride and fear cloud your judgment. And if you don't listen to me now, the true enemy will come for you, and you will not survive."
Ow.
The tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Lyra's mission was clear, but so was the choice before her: continue the fight, or consider a different path. Lyra stood frozen in place as Alpha Kale's piercing gaze met hers, his towering form still looming like a shadow over the battlefield. She had trained for years to fight and eliminate the deadliest threats in the galaxy. But standing before Kale, she felt an unsettling sense of doubt creep in. Was this truly the monster she had been sent to destroy? Or had her mission been based on nothing more than myths and fear? His words echoed in her mind, his voice calm and confident. "You are smarter than to let pride and fear cloud your judgment." Lyra clenched her fists, trying to focus. She couldn't let herself be swayed. Her orders were clear. The Zixer were a threat to humanity, and Alpha Kale was at the heart of that threat. But Kale wasn't moving. He simply stood there, watching her, his soldiers silent and still behind him. It was as if he was waiting for something in answer, a reaction. Lyra swallowed hard and steadied her breath. She had to make a choice. "Why should I trust you?" she asked again, her voice steady but filled with doubt. The question was more for herself than for Kale, a way to remind herself of the mission. She had to stay focused, no matter what. Kale didn't immediately answer. He let the silence stretch between them, his eyes never leaving hers. Finally, he spoke again, but this time his tone was softer, almost thoughtful. Because human, your people are about to face a greater enemy than you could imagine. A force that will consume you all, and there is nothing you can do to stop it unless we work together. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She had never been one to second-guess her orders, but the cold certainty in Kale's voice made her hesitate. What did he mean by greater enemy? The rumors she had heard about the Zixer and their endless wars had always painted them as the ultimate threat to humanity. Now Kale was suggesting that there was something far worse lurking in the galaxy. Her team had paused behind her, equally uncertain. Sergeant Ramirez stepped forward, his face grim. Captain, what's going on? We have a mission to complete. We can't just stand here and listen to him. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She didn't know how to respond. Everything she had been trained to believe was being tested. She glanced back at her squad, who were waiting for her orders. Their loyalty to her was absolute, but now they needed her to make a decision that felt like it could change everything. Alpha. It's Kale's deep voice broke through the silence. Do you think you can win this war alone? That you can defeat the real threat without understanding who your true enemies are? His gaze softened slightly. But it was clear that this wasn't just a battle of physical strength for him, it was a war of ideas. Lyra's mind raced. She had always been a soldier, a warrior. She had been taught to trust her instincts, to eliminate threats before they could strike. But what if Kale was telling the truth? What if the real danger wasn't the Zixer at all? What do you mean? Lyra finally asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Kale took a slow step toward her, his eyes still watching her carefully. There is a race beings beyond your understanding. They are called the True Conquerors. They are not of this galaxy. They are ancient, powerful, and they consume entire civilizations without mercy. The Zixer and humanity. We are nothing compared to them. The weight of Kale's words hit Lyra like a punch to the gut. She had heard whispers about powerful beings from other dimensions, but she had always dismissed them as fantasy. Now, standing before the Zixer Alpha, she realized that those rumors might have been more than just stories. The True Conquerors, according to Kale, were not just a threat to the Zixer, they were a threat to all life in the galaxy. Their ability to control minds, bend space, and erase entire worlds was beyond anything Lyra could comprehend. The Zixer, she now realized, had been fighting a desperate, losing battle for survival, not because they wanted to conquer the galaxy, but because they were trying to protect it from a force that would destroy everything. But why should we trust you? Lyra asked again, her voice tight with disbelief. You've destroyed so many planets, killed so many people. You're no better than the Conquerors if you're willing to take innocent lives to protect yourself. Kale's expression didn't change. You are right to question me, human. But we Zixer fight for survival. We do what we must to survive. And you too will have to do the same if you want to live. I'm not asking you to forget your mission or your loyalty to humanity. I'm asking you to understand that we are facing something far worse than what you can imagine. If we do not unite, we will all fall. Lyra's mind spun. Everything she had believed about the Zixer, their savagery, their cruelty, suddenly seemed less clear. They were not the mindless monsters she had been trained to hate. They were fighting for survival. And Kale, for all his brutal reputation, was trying to warn her. She turned to her squad, their faces filled with uncertainty. What do you think? She asked them, her voice barely above a whisper. Should we listen to him? Sergeant Ramirez looked hesitant, clearly torn. Captain, I don't trust him. He's a Zixer. He's been killing our people for years. How can we trust someone like that? Lyra didn't have an answer for him. She could see his point. The Zixer had been nothing but a threat to humanity, and here she was. Considering an alliance with one of their most dangerous leaders, it didn't sit well with her. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore what Kale had said. If there was a greater enemy out there, humanity needed to be prepared. We don't have much of a choice, Lyra said quietly. The True Conquerors are coming, and we need all the help we can get. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. You're seriously thinking of joining forces with him? After everything he's done? Not just him, Lyra replied, her voice firm. the Zixer as a whole. If we don't, we'll be wiped out before we even get a chance to fight back. There was a long pause as her team considered her words. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Even Ramirez, though clearly reluctant, finally gave a stiff nod. Lyra turned back to Kale. "We'll work with you," she said, her voice steady. "But no, we're watching you. If you betray us, we'll finish the job." Kale's lips curled into something that could almost be called a smile. "I would expect nothing less. But if you truly want to win this war, we will need each other. Trust is something that can be earned if you are willing to see beyond what you know." Lyra wasn't sure if she believed him, but she knew one thing. There was no other choice. If the true conquerors were as powerful as Kale claimed, humanity and the Zixer had no chance of surviving alone. It was time to put their differences aside and face the true enemy together. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Lyra's team worked alongside Kale's soldiers, learning about Zixer technologies, strategies, and tactics. It was a strange and uncomfortable alliance. Every day, Lyra found herself growing more and more uneasy. She had spent so many years hating the Zixer, seeing them as nothing more than enemies to be destroyed. Now, she was forced to rely on them, to learn from them, to fight beside them. But despite the discomfort, Lyra couldn't deny that Kale was a leader unlike any she had ever encountered. He was fierce, intelligent, and above all focused. There was no room for fear or hesitation in his mind. And it was this singular purpose that made him so effective. As the days passed, Lyra began to understand Kale's true nature. He wasn't just a warlord. He was a survivor, a leader, who had fought for his people's survival against an enemy that cared nothing for life. Kale wasn't the monster she had been led to believe. He was something far more dangerous. A creature forged by war, with the knowledge and strength to lead in a time of unimaginable peril. And if she was to save humanity, she would have to stand by his side. The alliance between Lyra Jensen and Alpha Kale had been forged under uneasy circumstances. For days they had worked together, their teams blending into one force, preparing for the coming war. Lyra had once thought of Kale as nothing more than a savage enemy. But now, after witnessing his strength, intelligence, and determination, she understood the truth. He wasn't the monster she had been sent to destroy. He was a leader, a survivor. And if humanity was going to have any chance at survival, they would need to unite with him. The days spent preparing for battle were long, filled with lessons in alien technology and tactics. Lyra and her team trained alongside Kale's soldiers, learning how to use Zixer weaponry and employing their tactics. It was a strange feeling working alongside the very species that had once been their greatest threat. But with each passing day, the lines between enemy and ally began to blur. Humanity's soldiers adapted quickly, and Kale's warriors respected their strength and skill. It was an alliance built on necessity, but as time went on, it became clear that it was something more. It was a partnership, one that could reshape the future of the galaxy. The first sign of the true conquerors came 1 week later. The sky above the Zixer capital trembled as an enormous fleet appeared in the distance. The ships were unlike anything Lyra had ever seen, dark, swirling and radiating an unnatural power. They didn't just move through space. They seemed to bend it, twisting reality around them. The true conquerors had arrived. Lyra's heart pounded as she stood on the balcony of Kale's command center. Her eyes locked on the ships in the sky. The sheer size of the fleet was enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. These were beings who could destroy entire planets without breaking a sweat. Beside her, Kale stood silent, his expression hard and determined. "They're here," he said softly, as if the sight of the enemy fleet was nothing more than an inevitable fact. "We're ready," Lyra replied, her voice filled with conviction. Despite the fear that gripped her, there was something inside her, something deep within her soul that told her they could win. The fight for humanity's survival had begun, and it was a fight she would face with everything she had. The next few hours were filled with frantic preparations. Kale's forces mobilized, and Lyra's team prepared their weapons, ensuring they were ready for the battle ahead. Despite the fear, there was an electricity in the air, a sense of purpose that had been missing in the days before. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a true sense of unity with her comrades. The Zixer and human soldiers standing side by side. "Prepare the weapon," Kale ordered, his voice deep and commanding. The weapon was a powerful device created by both the Zixer and human something that could disrupt the true conqueror's control over space and time. It was their best hope, and it was the only thing that might give them a fighting chance. The moment the weapon was ready, Lyra and Kale led the charge. Their forces stormed the battlefield, a united front of Zixer warriors and human soldiers. The air hummed with the sound of blaster fire and explosions, but Lyra's focus never wavered. She fought with a ferocity she hadn't known she was capable of, her body moving with precision as she cut down the Conqueror's forces. But the true Conquerors were not like anything Lyra had ever faced before. They didn't fight with brute force or weapons, they fought with their minds. Their powers twisted reality itself, creating illusions, controlling their enemies' thoughts, and making the very ground beneath Lyra's feet tremble with unnatural force. Her team was being pushed to the edge, but they didn't give up. Lyra pushed forward, her determination unbroken. "Keep pushing," she shouted to her squad, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't stop now." Her words were enough to keep her team fighting. As they pressed on, Lyra saw the first signs of hope. The weapon was working. The Conqueror's influence over the battlefield was weakening, their control over reality flickering. The tide was beginning to turn. Kale stood beside her, his massive form cutting through the chaos like a force of nature. He fought with a precision that was almost otherworldly, his every movement calculated and deadly. Despite their differences, despite everything that had separated them, Lyra couldn't help but admire him. He was not the monster she had once thought him to be. He was a warrior just like her. And now, they were fighting side by side for something bigger than either of them. As the battle raged on, Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the energy of the weapons surging, the Conqueror's grip on reality weakening. But then, just as victory seemed within reach, a figure appeared in the sky, one of the true Conquerors. Their leader, the Master of the Void, his form was incomprehensible, an amalgamation of shadows and light, his very presence warping the fabric of reality around him. The battlefield fell silent as the Master descended. His voice echoed in Lyra's mind, not through sound but through pure thought. "You think you can defeat us? You are nothing but insects playing at war. We are beyond your comprehension, beyond your strength. You cannot win." Lyra's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the Master's words, the crushing certainty that they were outmatched. But then, something inside her snapped. This was her fight. This was humanity's fight, and she would not back down. She gripped her weapon tightly, her voice firm as she shouted back, "We are not your playthings. We fight for our future, and we will not be erased." Her words seemed to echo across the battlefield, rallying the human and Zixer soldiers around her. Kale, standing beside her, roared in defiance. His voice joined with hers. "We fight for survival. We fight for all life." With that, they charged forward, their united forces pressing against the true Conqueror's forces with renewed strength. The Master of the Void attempted to warp reality once more. But the weapon built by both human and Zixer hands was fully activated. It tore through the fabric of space, disrupting the Conqueror's influence and giving the soldiers a fighting chance. The Master of the Void shrieked in fury as his hold on the battlefield weakened. His form flickered, his powers failing in the face of humanity's defiance. The true Conqueror's forces were pushed back, their grip on reality breaking apart as the weapon continued to surge with power. Lyra and Kale led the charge. Cutting through the remaining Conqueror's forces, it was a final, desperate push, but it was enough. The true Conquerors, their grip on reality shattered, began to retreat, their fleets vanishing into the dark void of space. For the first time in days, the battlefield fell silent. The fighting ceased. The hum of the weapon faded, and Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. The true Conquerors were defeated. Their invasion halted before it could even truly begin. Lyra looked around her. taking in the sight of her team, her allies, and the Zixer warriors. They were all standing together, bloodied, but victorious. Despite the differences that had separated them, they had united to save their worlds. And in that moment, Lyra realized something. It wasn't just the weapon, or even the battle strategies that had won the day. It was the strength of the people who had come together to fight. Kale approached her, his expression as stoic as ever, but there was something softer in his eyes now. "You fought well, human." Lyra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "We fought well. Together." And for the first time, Lyra understood the true meaning of strength. It wasn't in the weapons they carried, or the armies they commanded. It was in the bonds they had formed, the unity they had found, in the face of unimaginable danger. As the survivors of the battle gathered, Lyra knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. And with the Zixer as their allies, they would face whatever came next together.